Well, one of the big challenges when I came back to the studio was where to begin. And what I found is so interesting is that when that's happened to me in the past, I oftentimes go back to the place that I left off. And I just thought, maybe that's really a good strategy. So what I did was to spend a bit of time in the studio, not making anything, but simply looking around to see what I had. And I made a commitment to myself that all of the first work that I produced would be done out of materials that I had. I wouldn't be running to the store to buy new things. I wouldn't be thinking outside of the resources that I had here within the studio. And I decided also maybe that familiarity is a good place to begin. I even pulled out some images of works that I had done earlier, some drawings, some notes, and so on. I found a box with a group of scraps from a project that I had done at a big installation work at the Dennos Museum in northern Michigan. These white shapes here are those scraps. They are a silk fabric and they had a bonding adhesive on the back of them. And I just started playing with them. I had hundreds of them. And in the process of working with them, I discovered what I saw to be bird-like forms. I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. I'm in this transitional phase, and here's a bird, and a bird is a free kind of creature, free spirit. So I put together a group of pairs of these birds. I have them flirting with one another in the piece. I mean, you see them in various positions. And then they needed a place to live. So I thought, well, I'll develop a context. Where do birds live? I thought about the wren house that I have at home, and the idea of that little aperture and the bird flying in and out of that aperture, that the world view of the bird is through that hole. That seemed right. So I mounted those white pieces against this transparent fabric that has this opening here. And so the piece started to take shape. Along the way, I had a feeling that this needed to be counterparted with something else. There needed to be something that complemented the activity here. And looking at the whole, I was thinking, what in my experience is like that bird that flies in and out of that hole? And I remembered back to the beanbag toss at the carnival years ago when I was a child, taking the beanbag and throwing it through the clown's mouth. I thought, that's great. So I found a fabric that could have come from a circus and cut these apertures into it, applied silk over the open areas, and then picked up areas of contour off of these birds, transferring them with stitching with a very fine black silky thread onto these openings so that this kind of works as an echo. The best part of this piece was that the byproduct of the piece, because in the process of thinking about the beanbag game, it occurred to me that a game is a perfect strategy for starting up the work here in the studio again. That I could make works that implied a kind of involvement, a kind of physical involvement, that suggested that there were ways to move various components within the pieces, and that physicality could be a counterpart to my state of mind at the time, which was a very transitional one. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose a game, unless winning or losing is really important. And I decided to take a place in between those kinds of conditions. And so a series of works followed.